Hey, everybody. So you made it through the midterm week. Congratulations. And it's a midterm which signals to you that this is the closing of the first half of the semester and moving on to the next half of the semester. However, I think you'll see that a lot of the same themes that we've been discussing in the first half of the semester will carry over into the second half of the semester. Specifically, the idea of what sort of role a particular character holds and what responsibilities that character has because of the role that he or she carries. And I'm particularly excited about the Renaissance because this is where I did all my work as a undergraduate and graduate student, and a lot of my research and writing went into the Renaissance and understanding not just what the texts are, but what they do and what they're trying to do or what the authors are trying to do through the text. So I'm excited to see what you think about the. We're going to look at some courtly love poetry starting next week, and then move on to the stage where we look at Shakespeare and Marlowe before we take a look at John Milton as to more or less close out this period. So some of these texts will be familiar to you, especially the Shakespeare. If you've at least read one of his plays, if not this one that we're reading, Henry IV, Part 1. And I think you will find all of this reading particularly enjoyable. The language is a little bit easier now because we're shifting from the Middle English period to the early modern period, where we're starting to see a lot of the patterns that we have even now as modern English speakers starting to come into their own. And so you'll be able to read these texts a lot better, even as we're looking at some prose, some verse, and some theater work. You'll find it a little bit easier to grasp. Like with other texts, just start reading and you'll find that rhythm. It will be easier to do because this language is a lot closer to what we have. Before we get to that, though, we're going to start with, I think, one of the most important works in literary criticism, excuse me, especially in the English world, and that is Sir Philip Sidney's The Defense of Poesy. And I've assigned both portions of that text that are in our textbook, but also a large introductory chapter that lets you know about all of the cultural changes that are going on during this time. Some of the big ones to keep an eye on are the rise of the Protestant Reformation in England and how a lot of that was born out of getting the Bible in English to the people. And this came in part because of the role of the printing press and the availability of written language, scripture in the English language to the people here. You have big cultural trends taking place in Europe with the Protestant Reformation over there, and they cross the English Channel into England as well for a lot of different reasons that you'll unpack. You've also got a lot of shifts in the monarchy from Henry VIII specifically to Queen Elizabeth I, and the flourishing of the arts during Elizabeth's reign. And this is when we start to see a lot of things taking place in terms of the theater becoming more and more prominent. We have prose texts that start to become more and more available. Literacy is growing, people are reading, and you have these important cultural touchstones that you need to take a look at in that section. As we move into Sidney's Defense of Poesy, you'll see that this is the first work of literary criticism that we've unpacked this semester, and it's an important one because it really focuses on Sidney's definition of what literature is and what literature is most importantly supposed to do. And what he's doing is arguing that poetry in his term is basically any sort of fiction writing where you're using your imagination to create something that's not just right in front of us. So he argues for its value in the face of philosophy and history because he says it's greater at prompting virtue because of its engagement of the imagination. So think about this text. Think about what it might mean for what we've already read and for what it might mean as we go forward and unpack something like these courtly love poems, which may not seem to prompt any sort of virtue going forward, or in these works of the stage with Henry IV Part 1 and then Dr. Faustus. So I think this is something that you will find pretty engaging because it's in prose, which is helpful, but also his argument makes a lot of sense when you think about the role of literature in the face of philosophy and history. We might even think about it today is what is the role of literature in the face of things like science and math, that they have their place. I'm not saying they don't, but obviously as an English teacher, I'm going to think that English literature, and specifically, and because I research it, English literature has a very important role to play in the shaping of us as human beings. And which, if you think about the role of college and what you're supposed to be learning here, a lot of times we think about it in terms of how do I get through, get my degree, get my job. But this is this work is important not just for that practical value, but for shaping who you are as a person. So I look forward to seeing how you unpack that both now and also throughout the rest of the semester. We're back on a regular schedule this week. Discussion board posts are due Friday by 8. And comments due by Saturday by 8 as well. I'm working on the midterms now. I will have those back to you by the end of this week. And this will be important for you to think about because the final, in terms of structure, is the exact same as the midterm, just with some different subject matter. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. You can always reach me at my email, cmoody, CMOODY, @aum.edu. I look forward to looking at your work this week. Take care.